Hi everyone, Teddy Baldassarre with TeddyBaldassarre.com. In this video, we're looking at a watch from Bulova, a little bit of an out there design with the Bulova Oculus. So in this video and on this channel, we cover watches available for purchase on our website, TeddyBaldassarre.com, as a full authorized dealer. So in this video, deep dive into this timepiece, final points of consideration at the end. Also throughout, if you have any further questions, check out the link in the description down below where you can learn more, purchase the watch, and book a time with one of our dedicated watch specialists as well. But guys, let's jump into the video, take a closer look at this watch. There are certain people and names that are inextricably linked to a profession or field that transcend that very field and cross over into American pop culture consciousness because of their profound accomplishments and contributions to American society. A name that comes to mind to really fit this idea is American architect Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, even if you know nothing about architecture, there's a good chance you've heard the name or have seen his work, such as Falling Water in Mill Run, Pennsylvania, or the Guggenheim Museum in New York City. I was introduced to Frank Lloyd Wright at a younger age, as there were several of his designs located in Northeast Ohio, where I am from, and I was actually fortunate enough to spend extended time at one of those houses known as the Penfield House, where I visited on several occasions, and I actually shot a video long ago, before even starting this YouTube channel, kind of doing a walkthrough of the house itself. And I think that video is still on YouTube to this day. But in this video, we're going to take a look at a special edition piece that came to be through a long-standing partnership with Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation and Bulova with the Oculus Automatic, a watch that resembles many of the design influences from Frank Lloyd Wright, primarily his avant-garde December Gifts design. To begin our review with this piece, let's look at the wearing dimensions of this watch. First, we have a case diameter of 39 millimeters, thickness of 12.3 millimeters, and a lug-to-lug dimension of 45 millimeters. In totality, this watch wears smaller than what that case size is going to indicate. I find this wearing closer to that of 37.5 to 38 millimeter case when factoring in that lug-to-lug distance, and also considering the unusual crown position on this timepiece. All of that's going to factor in to make this one great wearer for those that want kind of a smaller presence with a watch. When it comes to the design of the dial, and we'll get into more details about the dial specifically, just given that it is a bit more out there, more avant-garde with its approach and unorthodox, that is going to demand a little bit more presence, but that is kind of more just from the optics and my own personal experience of just looking down at this watch on the wrist. Despite the restrained dimensions, when a dial is able to make this much of a statement, it does add some subconscious presence when you have this one on the wrist. There are three primary levels or planes to the case that are best viewed from the side. First, you have the lines of the angled bezel and the lug along the anterior surface of the case that run all together. Next, you have the side of the case, which is on its own line that transitions into the sides of the lugs. And finally, you have the back portion of the case, which tapers inward a little bit, providing a slightly smaller case back surface, which makes contact with the skin, giving the Oculus a smaller than expected wear even further. Now, crown placement on the Oculus is in an atypical location at the 2 o'clock marker rather than at the 3 o'clock position. However, it does operate in typical fashion despite the different position. Hand winding can be achieved at that first position, and at the farthest pulled out point, you can stop the second hand in the process, so hacking seconds here despite a pretty basic Miyota caliber on the inside. One interesting note here is that you can see that exposed balance on the front side, so when you do pull out the crown to the farthest position, you can see that hacking seconds function really in practice with the stopping of the balance wheel. Securing the Oculus to your wrist is a black 20 millimeter genuine leather strap that is simple, slightly distressed texture along that top side and a very soft nubuck-like underside for optimal comfort. Overall, the strap is soft and lightly padded, so you shouldn't have to have any really rough break-in with the strap. While the strap won't blow anyone away, it's definitely suitable for this watch, and I think is perfectly adequate for what you're going to get here. In terms of the taper from the strap to the buckle, you're looking at 20 millimeters down to 18 millimeters with that traditional pin buckle. The buckle is also going to include a Frank Lloyd Wright signature as well. One other point when it comes to the strap that I think should be mentioned is that it's not going to have sufficient holes in the strap to size for smaller wrists. It's rather long, so just keep that in mind if you're wanting to use this and say have a smaller wrist and are trying to match the case with your wrist size. If you need something that's going to be a little bit shorter, I'd recommend going for a third-party option. Transitioning to the dial, it could be admired through a dome mineral crystal. Here we have a sophisticated dial arrangement that is divided into quadrants, but more importantly, and to the point of the watch, represents an abstract depiction of Frank Lloyd Wright's December gifts, a theme carried throughout a special collection of timepieces and based on cover designs he provided for Liberty magazine in 1926 and 1927. They actually did not end up using the designs because they were so avant-garde for the period, but that design style became such an important part to many of his architectural designs to come. This particular dial embraces a grayscale aesthetic, starting with a light silver as a base and a mosaic of geometric sections that utilize darker shades of silver and gray. At the 12 and 3 quadrant, we have a bold stylized Bulova logo printed in black and polished just above the red Frank Lloyd Wright Foundation logo. Both logos are applied directly to the vertically brushed silver surface without any geometric elements found in other quadrants impeding the legibility of this area. Going counterclockwise to the 12 and 9 quadrant, we have a series of geometric arcs that alternate between a primary dial surface and darker sections that further out from the center of the dial as you move your eyes, with alternating gray sections and a lone silver section. This area is also where you'll find the probably most polarizing part of this watch, or at least one of the polarizing elements, which is that open heart aperture exposing the side of the balance assembly we don't often see. Within this window, you can also see a view of the escapement pallet fork at a certain angle that will allow this watch to come to life. The dial quadrants are defined with polished steel elements that act as borders or frames for each individual section. This high polished look extends to the aperture window and into the hands. Time-telling duties are given to a set of elegant Dauphine hands and a long, thin sweep second hand, which features another homage to Frank Lloyd Wright's Foundation with its square counterweight. Along the outboard edge of the dial, we have a simple silver chapter ring that helps give the dial some padding from the edge and adds a balance to the dial as it scales it down ever so slightly. One element that is absent here is any application of lume, so if you are looking for nighttime legibility, this isn't going to be the watch for you. Now, flipping this watch over, we do have an open case back giving us view of the Miyota automatic caliber, the 82S0. So this movement is an entry-level movement when it comes to Miyota calibers, and Miyota, where it's seated within all mechanical movements, is really towards that entry-level position. But still, when it comes to reliability, serviceability, and just giving you a lot of peace of mind from just a utility standpoint, Miyota is definitely certainly at the top in this price category. Now, given Bulova is a Citizen Watch Group company and Miyota is the watch movement production arm for the Citizen Watch Group, this does offer some synergies working in tandem. In regards to this general style with this open heart design, this is probably one of the more attainable options you're going to find actually utilizing this type of format. There's not as much of a custom type of orientation of the movement to allow this view to happen as you'll see with some higher end watches, but still a pretty cool practice if you've never really seen a mechanical watch this close and personal. In terms of the general operation of this movement, we're looking at 3 Hz, 21,600 vibrations per hour. It does feature hacking and hand winding. Hacking, again, stopping the second hand when you pull the crown to the farthest position, which can be admired from the front and the back with that full display of the balance, and has a power reserve of approximately 42 hours. In terms of range of deviation for these movements, you're looking at -20 to +40 seconds a day, but fortunately for this piece, and this is just anecdotal evidence, we tested this at multiple different positions, it was running about 15 seconds off from perfect time of day when factoring in all of those different positions. As far as the finishing goes, this is pretty straightforward, utilitarian. There is some subtle Côte de Genève finishing to the bridges, and you do have that hollowed out rotor, but other than that, this is entry level as it comes from a mechanical watch, but it's certainly going to do the job. All right, so now to unpack, looking at this Bulova Oculus. In terms of the watch itself and what it's representing, I think from a value perspective, it's kind of a basic entry-level mechanical watch that has a reliable Miyota movement on the inside with pretty wearable dimensions if you do like those with smaller cases. Now, in terms of the polarization, I think there's 2 points of this, and this is where you start to get into a very specific type of consumer that's going to look in the direction of this watch. One, for the open aperture design, I think that is something that not everyone's going to love, but also it's kind of a cool, just visual dynamic to add to the piece. But then the other topping on top of it is just the connection to Frank Lloyd Wright. And very similar to the Sinatra connection that Bulova has, I see this in a very similar lane in regards to who is the end consumer. I think the person that goes for this watch probably has some familiarity with Frank Lloyd Wright, if not is going to be a diehard fan. So that's the one side, but then you also have just people that will be generally intrigued in a mechanical watch that has an unorthodox design that can maybe start some conversation up without being overly ostentatious. To me personally, I've always been a fan of Frank Lloyd Wright. I've had some connection to some of his houses, so I'm probably gonna have a foggier view of how much pull that's going to have compared to many other consumers. But I think those are the type of things that I would consider and who's gonna ultimately look in the direction of this timepiece. All right, guys, well, thank you again so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That really does help out the channel. Also, if you're in the market for this watch and you like what you saw here today, definitely check it out. It's available on teddybaldassarre.com. Full authorized dealer of all the brands that we carry, quick and fast fulfillment, dedicated customer support. We also offer price match. So if you see one of our products for cheaper at another authorized dealer, fill out the form and we'll get in touch with you. Also, all of our products come with a full factory warranty, so you're completely covered if something goes wrong. You don't have that cost on your head. And finally, 9 out of every $10 that we generate goes right back into the content we're creating here, as well as on our main channel, helping to foster up a new generation of watch enthusiasts in the process. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.